to the government as a percentage known as the rate of tax will denote income tax. But sometimes instead of income which denotes the excess of revenue over expenditures. But sometimes it is a vice versa case, that is the revenue is less than the expenditure. So instead of having incomes, instead of having incomes, there are losses. And obviously you can't pay any tax on your loss because as such you are not earning anything. So there is no tax payable, but as they say that if on a positive income there is tax to be paid, then on the negative income known as the losses, there has to be the case of tax saved. So what we have to do that whenever there is any loss, then it shall result in tax saving. But this will be beneficial or this will be available only if there is some other income on which the tax was to be paid. तो अगर आपके सिर्फ लॉसेस हैं तो आप उस साल को टैक्स सेव नहीं कर पाएंगे. बट अगर आपके एक पर्टिकुलर फाइनेंशियल ईयर में लॉसेस भी हैं और इनकम भी है, देन इट इज पॉसिबल दैट द टैक्स पेबल ऑन सच इनकम विल बी रिड्यूस्ड बिकॉज दैट इनकम विल बी रिड्यूस्ड, दैट इज द वर्ड सेट ऑफ against such inherent losses. Now, if I come again, because whenever we have to pay tax on the income, this income is classified primarily under five heads, and those heads are namely income from salary, income from house property, income from capital gains, income from business profession, and income from other sources. Now, not to forget that these heads are somehow subdivided. For example, in the case of a house property, the house property can either be let out, so we can have income either from a let out property or from a self-occupied property, though income will only be from the let out property. In the case of self-occupied property, either there will not be any income, or if there is any possible income, then it will be only losses. Similarly, in the case of the capital gains, it can either be long-term capital gains or the short-term capital gains. Now, again, when we come to the case of business and profession, there is one circumstance where you have a normal business, or there can be a business which is more of speculation than any kind of normal business. Similarly, other sources, they should normally be not having any kind of losses, only income must be there. But a special case where people maintain horse race courses. So when you won from such races, then it is a speculation, it is a special income which will be taxed at a special rate of 30%. But those persons who are involved in the maintenance of horses or the horse race courses, then it concludes a kind of special other source income. So why we are saying that? That in addition to these five heads, what we have discussed here, they can be termed as subheads. So there can be a case where a person may have a salary income and there may be an inherent short-term loss for any activity undertaken on the share market. And if that creates a short-term loss, then it is a circumstance that person who is having a salary of say 10 lakhs for the financial year and could have incurred a short-term loss of 1 lakh 50,000. So he will always be looking that when there is an income, he is liable to pay taxes. Then if there is any loss, then why he should not be adjusting, or we should say saving the tax on such losses. So he will always want to adjust this loss against this income. So when we adjust the loss from a particular positive income and pay tax on the balance income. If I say if I am liable to pay tax only on 1 lakh, sorry, 8 lakh 50,000, then I will be saving taxes, and if that is not allowed, then I will be paying taxes on the 10 lakh figure, and this loss has not caused any tax saving to me. So whether this tax saving will be allowed or not, it depends that what kind of income you have and what kind of the nature of loss you are incurring. So when one kind of loss can be adjusted against another kind of income, then we say it is known as a set-off of losses. And such set-off of losses can be interhead, that is, the loss of one head out of the five heads is being adjusted against the income of another head, or it can be intra-head, and this intra-head can be inter-subhead. That is, for example, the loss from a short-term transaction, that is, short-term loss is being adjusted against a long-term gain. Or there can be circumstances where there is a subhead set off, that is, one long-term transaction caused one long-term transaction caused profits and another caused the losses. So we had this long-term loss which is to be adjusted against the long-term gain. So this set subhead set off is also possible. So if I give the example, so in this case the long-term loss is to be adjusted against a long-term gain. In this case, the long-term gain is trying to be adjusted against a short-term loss or vice versa. Or here we are trying to set off a loss, let's say from house property against a salary income or any other case. So we have to summarize the set of laws in these three categories. But before we move further, there is another thing to be understood that somehow if we say that there is certain set off which is allowed. For example, that house property loss can be set off against a salary income. But for a person, let's say the house property loss is say rupees 2,40,000, but his total income from salary is say only rupees 2,20,000. So even if we set off the whole loss here, there is still a balance loss of 20,000 has remained unadjusted. So whether this remaining unadjusted loss will go haywire, useless, or it can be adjusted against the incomes of the future year. So when the loss of one financial year can be adjusted, for example, if we say that the loss of the financial year 2021 can be adjusted against the loss of 21-22, then we say that the losses can be carried forward and then set off. So the topic says that adjustment of one kind of loss another against another kind of income is what you call the set-off of losses. And if such loss remaining unpaid for a particular financial year is being carried forwarded and to be adjusted in next year's incomes, then we say that the losses have been carried forward and then set off. And the important thing here again will be that it may also happen that even after a carry forward, the loss may remain unadjusted in the next financial year. So could it be carried forward for to the next financial year or the next financial year and so on? There will always be a limit that for how many years a particular loss can be carried forward. So if we on these lines summarize the law, then we can say that as such there is no loss under the head salary, because salary will either be positive or there will not be any salary, because when you calculate the salary income we have to deduct calculate gross salary and make certain deductions under section 16. And the character of the section 16 is such that they can never be more than the gross salary. So this income from salary will always be positive. So there is no question of set off under the head income from salary. But when we come to the head house property, then we have to remember that in a let out property, there can be unlimited loss. But in the case of a self-occupied property, there can either be a loss of 30,000 if the loan was taken only for repair purposes, and if the loan was taken for construction or purchase purposes, then the maximum loss could be rupees 2 lakhs. So, irrespective of the two circumstances, whether it is a let out property loss or the self occupied loss, the set off is allowed from the subhead. The set off is allowed from the subhead, that is, any two let out properties, if they are, and one is having a loss and another is having an income, then the loss of one let out property can be set off against the profit of another let out property. It is allowed intra-head, that is, loss of self-occupied property can be adjusted against the let-out property income. So in the first case, let-out का loss let-out की income से हो जाएगा, second का loss self-occupied का let-out से हो जाएगा, and vice versa is not possible because SOP will never have a positive side, no positive side of income, and it is also allowed inter-head. So we can say that the loss of house property can be adjusted against any other income during the previous year, keeping in mind that the lottery income is a special income which is neither adjusted for any inherent expenses nor for any inherent loss which can be set off. So the lottery incomes and such other windfall gains is a special income which is neither adjusted for any expense nor adjusted for any set off of losses and straightforward taxed at the rate of 30%. And except that, all kind of incomes can be adjusted against the loss for house property, and therefore house property loss always brings tax savings. Similarly, when we come to the capital gains, then here the long-term capital loss is a special, or we can say that it is a special income. So the long-term capital loss can be adjusted only against the long-term capital gain. So there is only subhead set off allowed here. Only the subhead set off allowed. So long-term cannot be adjusted against short-term capital gain and not against any other heads. तो किसी और हेड के अगेंस्ट भी ये अलाउड नहीं है. सो देर इज नो intra-head and no inter-head set-off allowed for the long-term loss. But if we go to the short-term capital loss, then it is allowed from the subhead, that is short-term loss can be adjusted against short-term capital gain. It is allowed intra-head, that is it can be adjusted against long-term capital gain, but not against any other income. So no inter-subhead allowed, or we can say no inter-head set-off allowed. So we can summarize that all the capital losses will be set off only against their intra-head family. That is, long term can be adjusted only against long term gain, and short term will be adjusted only against short term or the long term. And you not to forget that if the house property loss remains unadjusted in the current financial year, then it can be carried forward for a maximum years of 8. यानी कि अगले 8 साल तक कैरी फॉरवर्ड हो सकता है. और ये बात ध्यान रखनी पड़ेगी कि ये जो बेनिफिट था किसी भी हेड की इनकम से सेट ऑफ होने का, वो सिर्फ करंट फाइनेंशियल ईयर में था. एक बार कैरी फॉरवर्ड होने के बाद सिर्फ हाउस प्रॉपर्टी के हेड से ही सेट ऑफ होगा, यानी कि इंटर हेड सेट ऑफ का बेनिफिट खत्म हो गया. और यहाँ पर लॉन्ग टर्म में सेम केस, दैट इट कैन बी कैरिड फॉरवर्ड फॉर अ पीरियड ऑफ 8 years. और जब करंट ईयर में लॉन्ग टर्म के अलावा किसी से एडजस्ट नहीं हुआ, तो फ्यूचर में भी किससे होगा, सिर्फ लॉन्ग टर्म गेन से. द सेम गोज हेयर, दैट दे कैन बी कैरिड फॉरवर्ड फॉर 8 years, और फ्यूचर में भी या तो शॉर्ट टर्म से होंगे या लॉन्ग टर्म से होंगे, किसी और हेड से या किसी और हेड की इनकम से लॉसेस सेट ऑफ नहीं हो पाएंगे. Similarly, if you have the business and profession income, So if it is a normal business, then the normal business losses are allowed सब हेड, यानी कि एक बिजनेस का लॉस दूसरे बिजनेस से सेट ऑफ हो जाएगा. They are allowed intra head, that is, they are allowed, I'm again writing, they are allowed intra head, that is, normal business का speculation business से हो जाएगा. And they are allowed inter head, inter head set off भी allowed है, but सैलरी से नहीं होगा, except salary. So the important thing is except salary, यानी कि बिजनेस का लॉस सैलरी के अलावा करंट ईयर में किसी भी दूसरे तरह की इनकम से सेटअप हो जाएगा, और अगर अनएडजस्टेड रहा तो अगले 8 साल तक कैरी फॉरवर्ड होगा. और अगर कैरी फॉरवर्ड हो गया तो फ्यूचर में सिर्फ बिजनेस एंड प्रोफेशन के हेड से ही सेटअप होगा, किसी और हेड से सेट ऑफ नहीं होगा. यानी कि सैलरी के अलावा बाकी इंटर हेड सेट ऑफ का बेनिफिट फ्यूचर में बिजनेस लॉसेस को नहीं मिलेगा. और अगर इस स्पेकुलेशन की बात करें तो वी कैन क्लोज दैट अदर सोर्सेज में, नॉर्मल अदर सोर्स में लॉस होता ही नहीं है. और अगर हॉर्स रेस कोर्स के मेंटेनेंस का बिजनेस है, सो दे बोथ गो एट पार, दैट दे विल ओनली बी सब हेड सेट ऑफ अलाउड. यानी कि अपनी जैसे इनकम के अलावा किसी और इनकम से सेट ऑफ नहीं होंगे, ना तो इंट्रा हेड और ना इंटर हेड. दोनों के दोनों सेट ऑफ इन दोनों स्पेशल इनकम्स में अलाउड नहीं है. यानी कि अपने तरह की इनकम के अलावा किसी और तरह की इनकम से सेट ऑफ नहीं होंगे, चाहे करंट ईयर हो और चाहे आफ्टर कैरी फॉरवर्ड हो. और दोनों में एक स्पेशल केस है कि बाकी सब के लॉसेस 8 साल तक कैरी फॉरवर्ड हो सकते हैं, ये दोनों लॉसेस सिर्फ और सिर्फ 4 साल तक कैरी फॉरवर्ड हो सकते हैं. और अगर अगले 4 साल तक भी ये लॉसेस सेट ऑफ नहीं हुए, then these are ignored and their carry forward benefit will not be allowed in the time to come. So we can clearly say that the heads which are prone to loss, that is, there are quite a high chance of having losses in those heads, will be allowed to set off their losses from their similar nature incomes, and hence even the intra-head setups are not allowed. Forget about the inter-head setup. And the losses which are primarily a tax saving scheme, for example, the losses under the head house property, are allowed not just from the intra-head but also from inter-head incomes. But all these benefits or these special privileges, even if allowed, will be available only for the current financial year. And once the loss gets carried forward, then this inter-head set-off is not available for any kind of loss, whether it's a house property loss or whether it's a normal business loss. And therefore, if once the loss is being carried forward, they can be adjusted only in the restricted space of any income coming out from their similar kind of head. Thank you.